What's your favorite? How did you get? I'd be remember. Was it ever? Where did all the oh, forget it. Soren, Bowie, Daniel O'Brien. Two best friends and comedy writers. If there's an answer, they're gonna find it. I think you'll have a great time here. I think you'll have a great time here.
So, hello again and welcome to another episode of Quick Question with Soren and Daniel, the podcast where two best friends and comedy writers ask each other questions and give each other answers. I am one half of that podcast, senior writer for Last Week Tonight, author of How to Fight Presidents, and a man exposed, Daniel O'Brien, joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Soren Bowie. Soren, say hello!
Hello, everybody. I'm Soren Bowie. I'm the other half of this podcast. I work at American Dad as a writer as well. I don't have any books to my name, and I am in circulation.
Do you,
A man exposed?
you wrote a novel
I did.
before I met you. Is that something you ever want to do again? Is that like still an itch?
Yeah, it is. In fact, at one point, Robert Brockway, friend of the show, friend of Daniel and I, also a very prolific author of books, at one point was like, even reached out to me to be like, hey man, I like your writing. Would you like me to put you in touch with my agent? And I was like, oh, yeah, I have a book. I would love to do that, but let me look at it first again. And so I went back and looked at it. And because I wrote it over a decade ago, I'm like, this needs a ton of work because you're never the same person you were when you wrote something.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this would need a ton of work before I ever give it to him. I'll start working on it. So I started working on it, realized it needed even more, it needed even more work than I anticipated. And then I just never got back to him and I just left it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at some point I would. The trajectory of my book was I had gotten fired from a job. I didn't have any work at all. And I was feeling very down on myself, but I was also reading On Writing by Stephen King at the same time. And his like 1 foot in front of the other approach to writing was like eye-opening to me. And so I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to follow the regiment. And so I started doing it. And I had a book that I liked the idea of that I wanted to write. I had an agent that I had been in touch with just through friends that I reached out to in New York. And I gave him the first 50 pages. And I was like, what if I wrote this novel? Can we sell it? And she was like, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I wrote not in advance or anything like that. I just wrote this novel while I didn't have work. And I was traveling back and forth between Los Angeles and Colorado without work, going home and being living at my parents for a little while. And this was the only thing that was keeping me thinking I was not a failure.
Right.
And so I was that's why I kept writing. I was dependent on it. I was dependent on it because it was my last string to I'm moving forward. I am doing something.
Yeah.
And finished it, really liked it, gave it to her. She was like, yes, a year from now, we will be toasting champagne to this book. That never happened. No one wanted it.
No, that's never happened in the history of books. No one's ever toasted champagne for the success of a book.
No. And
We're still waiting on that first successful book.
In retro, I was clear that I didn't start out with I started out with a story as opposed to being what genre would this book be best for? And so as a result, it was this book doesn't belong to a genre. It has a YA feel to it, but it's also some very adult stuff happening in it. It's from the perspective of a kid, but the majority of the story is about the adults. And it just it was not for anybody other than me. And it was clear. That's clear to me now. At the time, I was just this is another slice of Americana ready for the bookshelves. And it also became clear to me, I think in hindsight, that this agent, quasi friend of mine, was likely trying to sleep with me. And
okay.
I was being helpful in a way that maybe was outsized for what I had written.
Well, a couple things about that. It's certainly possible that the agent wanted to sleep with you for sure. But as soon as you framed it as you asking the agent, should I write this novel? Can I sell it? And they say yes enthusiastically. That bumped me. And this is not a knock on your talent. I know you're talented. You know you're talented. The audience knows you're talented. No agent in history, especially with a first-time author, is going to say no when someone says, hey, should I pour in like a whole bunch of my time and free labor into delivering you a book? No one's ever going to say no to that. I think they would only say no if it was truly like Stephen King, who was like, I think I want to pivot to poetry. Then they might say no to that. But for anyone else, it's just like, yeah, you can waste as much of your own time as you want writing a book, and then we will try to sell it after that. Yeah. They'll never discourage you.
I mean, I was so young. I was like 24, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was like, I didn't know anything. And I also, it's like, I'm just like replaying the moments that we actually were together in my mind. And I'm like, yeah, this was a person who was flirting with me. This was a person who was like helping because they thought it furthered the relationship, I think.
Yeah.
And I was blind to that when I was young. Wasn't a thing I was really aware of because I wasn't a woman, right, Dan? This kind of thing didn't happen to me.
Right.
And so like I never had to ask myself, I wonder if this is talent or if this is just a situation in which somebody else wants to have sex.
Right.
Which, what an awful way to live. Sorry, ladies. Well, Daniel, you said exposed.
Yeah. So this, I don't know if you've been following the news, but over here on the East Coast, there's been a storm, and when I say East Coast, I often just mean New Jersey because that's where I live. So that's where all the main characters live. But it's actually, if you were looking at weather maps, it was the whole coast for the beginning of this week. Just like that's how big the fucking storm was. It was just the coast of America. And I live on the beach, which is the most coast.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of rain. There was some snow more inland and a ton of wind. And like everything, we were fine. We didn't even lose power and nothing was destroyed in my actual apartment building. The fence we share with our neighbors was completely knocked down. I woke up to that just like in the sidewalk alleyway that I take to leave my home every day. And it is still, this was a couple days ago. It's still there now. It is unclear to me if it's my responsibility to fix that. Because I know we have like so it's a condominium where I live. And I think a lot of people, I've mentioned this before, this is their second home, or not even home, but like their summer place to use the great beach access. There's only like 6 or 7 other people living in this whole building right now. And I know like the building manager doesn't live here. We don't have anyone on site that does maintenance. Like you call your own maintenance person to do things. And I'm unused to this kind of living. I've lived mostly in apartment buildings my entire life that like someone fixes the things. And now every time I walk past this downed fence that I didn't report to anyone, I'm sort of just like, boy, they're really dragging their feet on this. It's either got to be my job to fix it or to tell someone to fix it. I don't think this is going to get resolved unless I'm involved somehow.
Right. You saying all that is making me realize that in a zombie apocalypse type of scenario, going to a place where people only travel there in the summer or visit there in the summer is like ideal. You maybe have like 40 people living in your town right now.
Right.
Well, shit. I don't think this is your responsibility.
I don't think fixing it is
no,
my
I don't even think
responsibility.
telling somebody. I think that you're not even on the hook to be like reporting it.
Right, because I don't own my unit, but I also know like the guy who does own it, who doesn't live in this state, has no reason to know that the fence is down.
Well, and what is it? Is it in your way? Is it an inconvenience to you, or is it just
not at all? No, it just looks shitty. Yeah, blight.
Then I would just leave it. I have one more question for you though. When you got outside and you saw the fence was down, did you get a little excited?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Why did I get excited?
Because I think, well, I mean, on like a very bare bones level, it's something new. Like that's when it's windy here in Los Angeles, which it's been a lot lately, and I go out into the street and there are palm fronds all over the road. I'm like, yes. Yeah, that's devastation. Like this is new. We survived something. I think
it's
that
also if for I'm sure I talked about this kind of thing, but like listeners of the podcast might remember that small talk with strangers is huge and really fun for me. So like a fence down and the roads were so flooded, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna make an appointment at the bank so I could talk to someone, so they could ask me what was it like in my town, and I could show them the picture on my phone.
Yeah. How strong was it? How strong was the weather in your town? Strong enough to take down a fence, and everyone knows exactly how strong that is. I read a thing on online, Daniel, that was like a little thing you could do if you ever have to leave your house for an evacuation. You don't ever have to evacuate there, do you?
Not yet.
Okay.
But,
They don't have like
you know.
hurricanes, or that's not like a real issue for you.
No, flooding is a bigger thing. Well,
Okay.
why am I saying no? Hurricane Sandy, and Floyd. Jersey's been rocked by hurricanes in your lifetime. We're still recovering from Hurricane Sandy.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, then there's a neat little trick you can do. It won't save you from a hurricane, but when you come back to your house, if you have to evacuate, you put a mug of water in your freezer and it freezes, and then you put a quarter on top of it, and you leave it in the freezer. And then it doesn't have to be a quarter. If you don't have a quarter, it can be any change. But then when you come back to your house, you open up your freezer and you look. And if that quarter is still sitting on top of the ice, then your food is good to eat. But if it's like at the bottom, then what happened was at some point your house lost power, your freezer completely thawed, I mean, and then it froze again because the quarter sunk.
Right.
And then you know whether you need to throw away all that food or not. Because otherwise you just have no way of knowing. It's just your food's cold. Your food still seems frozen. Should be fine, but it's not.
Sure. Speaking of food going bad, hey, Soren, quick question for you.
Okay.
What do the expiration dates on your food mean to you?
Nothing.
Okay.
Like
Care to elaborate?
Yeah. If it's something that has no moisture in it at all, like a dry, something like spices, for instance, like I'll keep spices for an eternity. And I will continue to use them. Medication, same thing. I will continue to use it and assume that it will be full effect. But if it's something that's wet, I rarely ever look at the date. I will only look at the date if I'm also sensing that the food through my other senses is not so good. Then I will like visually inspect to see if the date is what the date says.
Right. If something looks different or smells different or feels different, then you can use those senses. I mostly pay attention. I'm the same way with you with medication, that like I don't know if the expiration date on medication does anything.
Feels like a fraud. Yeah, it feels like a fraud.
It feels like a fraud to me, and it's something that like if it's true, if it does go bad, then that's just poor design on your part, because most of the medication that I buy is stuff that I'm not going to use every day until it expires. It's stuff like I got sick, I bought this thing, and then it's years later. I have another cut. I need Neosporin again for the first time in 8 years. Why would it can't go bad? I'm refusing to believe that it's bad. But the food thing, I started at a new food pantry this past week, and this is the first time I've been in like the warehouse that like sorts, moves, and distributes the food that goes to various pantries. So this is where we're really in the shit now. Mm-hmm. We're really like taking the stuff that people have donated and organizing it and everything like that and packing it up. But there was a chart at the food pantry where it has like all the different foods separated by food genre and little notes in their chart that'll say like, if it's canned soup or canned anything and the expiration date is X, then it is good for this many years after the expiration date, or this many months. Like everything is on the chart. Yeah.
Your cheat sheet. Oh.
Yeah.
Take a picture of it and send it to me, please.
I almost took a picture of it for myself to be like, I'm going to use this for my home soup.
Yeah.
I don't like, because for soups, it's like 2 years past expiration date.
Well,
and already
soup
when you
in
get
a can
soup,
or okay, all right.
Soup in a can. And other things is like, this is good for 7 months past the Best Buy, and this is good for 19 months past the Best Buy. All these things. It was like, why is this information only here in the pantry? Why are we putting the wrong, like, I know why we're putting the wrong dates on things in stores. We're putting it so people will throw it out and buy more, but it's still, it's such bullshit. I'm sure we covered this in the old days at Cracked. It feels like one of those facts that was in an article about how your grocery store lies to you or whatever. But I have forgotten about that because time passed. And now I'm just looking at this cheat sheet that lets me see the matrix of how all food actually works. And it made me so mad.
I suspect that within our lifetimes, milk got in trouble for this because I remember when I was a kid, we would go to the grocery store and we'd buy milk in a carton, and I would be like, we'd have to like sort through them and be like, well, what's the furthest back date? Like, because it was only like a month, maybe less than a month for like how before milk was supposed to expire. But in my adulthood, milk goes for like 2.5, 3 months. It's so much further out now. I think maybe at some point, well, either we invented some chemical that's preserving it, or they got caught with their hand in the till. Like they got caught telling people, oh no, you got to drink this in 48 hours or it will kill you. No, but for the most part, I don't give a shit about dates. I would, but if I had like the truth,
yeah,
I absolutely would. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Next time you go back, please take a picture.
I will.
And we'll be the only ones in the world who know.
Yeah, I won't tell you what the actual dates are on the podcast. I'll just send it to you because information was kept from me. And instead of turning into Robin Hood, here's what I do with information. It's like, no. I will keep this for the elite. I'm now in charge of who the elite is.
That's for my wealthy friends.
Right. That's what a real win is.
Well, Daniel, I have a question for you related actually more to what we were talking about earlier with neighborhood gossip. I think I've asked you before on the podcast. Are you on Nextdoor?
I am. Yeah. I'm not as active as I used to be because it's become not great. I mean, it's possible it was never great. I used to love it as like, oh, this is a really cool way. It was great COVID entertainment for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
To learn like, oh man, it's so cool that all of my neighbors are insane in very different ways. And like, I had no idea because they had previously not been given a platform, but now that they have, it's so fun to get these little insights into these absolute lunatics who are passionate about dumb things.
Yeah.
It was a really fun treat for me to explore every once in a while, the petty things that people get upset about. But maybe it's because I moved out of Manhattan and into a demographically different part of the world. It has now just become like a racism app, like most apps. It's now like a dog whistle app about the certain areas that you can't go to anymore, according to these the wealthy whites who live here as their summer home.
When you have to consider the type of people who are, and you say active, you mean like active as a listener. The people who are actively typing things out and sending it off to the world on an app like Nextdoor are the type of people who you probably don't share a ton of politics with. And I think that's happened pretty much everywhere. If LA is if I can have my finger on the pulse here for like what Nextdoor is across the world, people have, I would assume that these are right-wing people, but they have everything that they put on there is part of a bigger narrative, which is that cities are collapsing because that's that's like the narrative of the right is like cities have fallen into ruin. Thanks a lot, Biden. Right. And so they relish in any opportunity to talk about how the city is falling apart.
Right. Even though this is a casual reminder that looting and retail theft is down across all but a few cities in America and has been going down for years. Right. Just a small little thing that I like to drop in every once in a while because that is not the narrative that you will see even consuming liberal news. It is just the media for some reason loves to talk about how looting is going up even though it's going down.
Well, that's also the stuff it's because that's the stuff that bubbles at the top. Same with Nextdoor. Like because they like that kind of story, that's the stuff that's going to get commented on the most. That's the stuff that's going to float to the surface. So like even if it's somebody who's innocently being like, hey, my car was vandalized. This is kind of a picture of the person. I actually got it from a Ring Cam. And Ring Cam's its own thing, its own political thing. But like I got it from a camera. Take a look, and let me know if you recognize this guy. That stuff will automatically get bubbled to the top because it's more proof of a narrative some people want to believe. And so it's the same in culturally,
Oh,
like
sorry.
that news, like that's the news that's going to get the most attention because both sets of eyeballs, both left and right eyeballs are on that. And the right's just got like a different reason that they're looking at it than the left. Go ahead.
Yeah. Ring State and Nextdoor is so much scarier and more insidious, I think, to me than like Nanny State that everyone's always worrying about, like Big Brother, like the government spying on you. This is so much creepier and more invasive to me, the rise of Nextdoor and ring cams, because you're talking about someone saying like a package was stolen and I have it on camera. Does anyone recognize this person? There's plenty of times on Nextdoor where it's just like a picture of a guy, not necessarily doing a crime, but it's like, does anyone know who this guy is? This weird guy was walking up and down my block. I don't know who he is. And like, again, there's like I don't even want to say undercurrents, racial overcurrents about this. There's just like a picture of a non-white person. It's like, does anyone know who this is and why they were walking up and down the street?
Yeah, they walked up and then 5 minutes later they walked back. And it was like, it sounds like somebody went to the fucking gas station and got some got a soda.
or like people taking pictures of a car in a parking lot. And it was like, this person screamed at me. Here's their car and here's their license plate. Does anyone know it? And it's like, I don't know. The news doesn't even do that. The police don't even really like release, here's a picture of a car with a license plate for someone who may or may not be guilty of a crime. Like, at least when the police do it, you can kind of assume that like it's tied to an actual crime or you know, your best shot at finding someone who is tied to an actual crime versus someone, you know, it's potentially a lunatic talking about another lunatic and taking a picture of their car and their license plate and their face and posting it to other lunatics who all want to play Batman on Nextdoor.
Yes. I mean, the very best posts on Nextdoor, the most unhinged posts, are the ones that you click through and it's already been deleted. Like you see like the lead in because you get an email or whatever, you get a notification and you're like, oh, this is about to be some crazy shit. Like, this person who's writing this is way more dangerous than the person who they're afraid of in this situation. Yeah. So Nextdoor's a nightmare. It should be abolished. I'm on Nextdoor a lot, Dan.
I'm on it right now.
I'm on Nextdoor a ton because of the stuff that gets bubbled to the top. It's all victim crimes. So it's something happened to your car, someone stole your packages, and break-ins. And these things are not common. I need to stress this again. Like, it's not a common thing. But if you were on Nextdoor, it would feel very common because you're seeing 6 or 7 of these things appear like a week. And the worst part of me, like this is not a nice part, something that I like about myself, but fuck it, I like to do it, so I do it. I will look through those and in my mind fantasize about what I would do in the same situation. And like it's like me trying to protect myself from a feeling of helplessness of like, oh, if someone broke into my house and this exact thing happened, now how would I handle that? The same way that like you break your arm and somebody's like, how did you break it? Because the only reason they want to know how is like the edification, I guess, a little bit, but also like, oh, I will avoid doing that. Yeah. Now I will know not to do that anymore. It's like, I do the same thing. And then I'm Mark Wahlberg, like Mike Wahlberging when he, after 9/11, when he talked about
two shots at that. And I think between your 2 stabs, we can Frankenstein his name.
I'm Mark Wahlberg. I'm Mark Wahlberging. After 9/11, you of course remember he said exactly what he would do on the flight and he would have stopped the terrorists. I do the exact same thing, but I do it on a much more local grassroots level. And I just want to to give you a sense of this, I want to throw a couple of these scenarios at you and ask what you would do in them. Okay. Things that I read online. I'm going to have to paraphrase because I can't find them again, but you wake up in the middle of the night, Daniel, and let's say Shay is there. Okay. So you have somebody else that you are, for sexist reasons, you're in charge of. Sure. This is your job. So you wake up and you hear what you
Sorry, I can hear her laughing in the future when she listens to this episode, laughing at the assertion that I'm in charge.
you hear what you think might be a door opening. And you're like, oh, that's weird. But you're not sure. Like, you're like 30% sure. It's one of those ones where you're going to stop and take both your ears off the pillow because you're like, if I hear anything else, then for sure I will know. And so you hear something, you're not sure what. And then you hear your fridge open.
Oh.
And you hear like a can of something carbonated sneeze. Like you hear that tss, like somebody opening a can of soda or beer or something. What do you do in that situation?
I would have to walk out of the bedroom with my bedside bat ready for, I mean, like, I don't want to do violence, but certainly I want to appear like I am ready
To do violence.
Yeah.
You want them out. You want them out fast.
I do.
Are you going to call 911 first?
Damn it.
Well, your phone's in the bedroom now. Shay will probably do that. Shay will think to do that. Okay. So you're going to go out there, and do you want the element of surprise, or do you want to like be as big and loud as possible so this person thinks this was a bad idea?
Neither of those two. I think I don't want to sneak up on someone, but I also don't want to be big and loud. Because you've outlined a very specific situation that my brain has latched onto.
That's why I love it. That's why I love Nextdoor.
Because I know what they're opening, because I know what's in the fridge. We don't have any beer. We don't have any soda. If something's making a carbonated pop, it is the seltzer that we make ourselves with the Soda Stream.
Okay, well, let's say you had spin drifts in there or something. Let's pretend for this situation that you still have LaCroix in your fridge.
Okay, but I was told I was drinking too much LaCroix. So what happened? Did we get in a fight?
So
now I'm allowed to do whatever I want?
Yeah. Yes. But like there are other consequences. Like you're out there and she's gonna wait a little longer to call 911 just to see what happens. To see how this shakes out.
Okay.
Okay. So.
It sounds like things are pretty rocky between me and Shay. So at that point, I'm not bringing the bat. I'm ready for death. Whatever.
You're going to walk out. First of all, see if this is maybe your soulmate. See if maybe this is somebody that like...
Right. It's like, finally, I have someone to drink LaCroix with.
Okay. We've gone off the rails, but like I liked the hyper specificity. And I think this is also a product of the police department not being super effectual here, where like people put their police reports on Nextdoor because they feel helpless. Like they've got something happen to them. They want to put like all the information down, as much information as they can. So they've already told this story before to police and felt very much like they're not going to do shit. I'm going to put it on Nextdoor. And at least then I'll get some commiseration from all these people. So these like hyper specific situations. I'll tell you exactly what happened in this one. There was a woman who heard that in her house. Her one-story house. She heard it. She heard the fridge open, and she heard somebody like opening Tupperware or something like that. And she was like, she was very nervous about it. She didn't even see the person because what she did was her room was in the back of the house and there was a window, and she just crawled out her own window and left. Wow. And was like very shaken and called the police and stuff like that. They came, they didn't find anybody in the house. They saw somebody had been there. But like you're dealing with a specific type of crazy. Yeah. That's like they know somebody might be home, but they're still making noise. So like I'm so I think when you talk about fridge and opening food items, my brain thinks this person is not armed and dangerous, which is probably like a dumb way for me to think. I should always assume that everyone is armed and dangerous because this is America. But I think this is someone who is mentally unwell, and is potentially a homeless person who is looking for food and got lucky finding a place that they could break into, assuming that that no one would be home, because that is not
the behavior of someone who is here to rob me or murder me.
I would think so too, but then you hear these stories about serial killers and stuff, and people who have like a real ritual when they get to somebody's house. They don't even go into the bedroom first. Like they do stuff. Like this one guy would organize the plates so that he could put them on the back of the man who he's going to tie up, so that he would hear the plates crash if the guy tried to get out from underneath him. Like that kind of shit. Where you're like, oh, I can't get inside the head of somebody who's going to break into a house. So like already I'm at such a huge disadvantage. So while like I understand your instinct to be like, I have to present. Like I have to present in a way that's a bluff. That's like, I'm big enough and bad enough that you could be damaging to you. Please get out of this house. But I don't think I'm there anymore, especially with kids too. My instinct then is I'll tell you what I came up with for my fantasy. If I heard that, I'm going to sneak to my children's room. I won't even wake Colleen up yet. I'll sneak to my children's room and I will take both of them into my room. So at least we're all consolidated. I also have access to my attic from my room. And then I will, as quietly as possible, get everyone up into the attic. Try to lock the door to my bedroom and then shut it, and then just call 911 and wait up in the attic, because I just want to be out of the way of whatever's happening here. Because I cannot sense yet like how big of a problem this is, and I don't want to try to figure it out.
Probably the smartest thing.
I mean, the other thing I considered was I do have a hatchet in my room, and for the same reason, for like if I absolutely need it in extreme circumstance, would I put all of them somewhere safe and then go try to confront this person in the same way you were? You were like, hey, you don't belong here. You got to go. Like same way you would like with an animal. Like you're not mad at the animal, but you're like, you got to go. Like you don't belong in here.
Not to compare people to animals, but if someone's in there, I'm certainly thinking like, look at me. I'm not calling the cops yet. This doesn't go well. You don't want this.
An animal.
You want to leave now,
right? As in, like, I'm an animal too. This is how we do it. Like, if there's a bear, I am also going to be a bigger bear. I'm going to be like, all I got to do is be a bigger thing than you. And so I was like, well, maybe I do that, and then I confront them. And I was like, I don't want to do that either, because this is crazy. Like, first of all, there's desperation in it, and desperation is like, even if somebody who's rational can do crazy things when they're desperate, but then also it might just be genuine crazy. And then I don't know what I'm dealing with. It might be somebody who's like, as soon as I get down there, they're like, what are you doing in my house? And they start
that's true.
doing the same thing to me. And then
I could come out there and like, hey, you don't want me to call the cops? I want you to call the fucking army. Oh, okay. All right.
Oh boy.
Okay. That was my best move.
Well, I'm going to be in my bedroom if you need anything.
Well, joke's on you, buddy. The phone's on my charger in the room, so I can't call the cops or the army. Now what are you going to do?
Let me give you another one. And this one was actually, I think I've talked to you about this. This is one that happened to me, and I was so dumb in the moment, which is I had my son in the morning. My wife had already gone to work. He was getting ready I was going to take him over to his daycare. And I'm getting dressed. I have him in my room. I'm on the second story of a house. I open the blinds and look out, and standing in my backyard is a guy. And a guy who's not just like arms crossed, like doing something. It's arms slack at his sides, head kind of tilted. I wouldn't say a homeless guy. Like he's a young kid who's like 19, 20, but like really just gone, like out of it. And he's just staring like a zombie.
Right.
And I was like, fuck. And like immediately, like, whoa, I did not expect that. And my first instinct was I started walking down the stairs to go confront him. And I stopped and I was like, this isn't a good idea. What am I doing? And so I went back upstairs, and I don't know why I didn't think to do this. I should have taken like video or filmed him or taken pictures or something. But all I did was I like called the police, and I was like, hey, I want you to know there's somebody in my backyard. He doesn't belong here. I didn't invite him. And they're like, okay. And, they arrive like 90 minutes later or whatever. But as it's happening, like I'm kind of keeping an eye on this guy. And eventually he hops, he like peeks around my house, and then he hops back over my wall. I think he was running from somebody, but he hops over my back wall. into the street over. This was when I lived in a different neighborhood where it was there was a lot of gang activity, and I had some people in the neighborhood that I knew fairly well who were also either used to have been in gangs or were currently in them. And I would go outside, and my neighbor across the street is hanging out, and I told him what happened, and he goes, oh, and he just went on the other street. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, do you want us to go scoop him up? And I was like, no. I didn't know that was an option. And I was like, it's just like things I didn't even consider and I wouldn't consider. But then also like I just made dumb decisions too, where I didn't even bother to like take video of him, or even it took me like a very long time to even call the police about it.
Yeah.
But
Man.
yeah, anyway, these are the reasons that I love
Yeah.
seeing these narratives play out on Nextdoor, because I can be like, okay, now I will be prepared for that situation next time. It will never ever happen to me.
I think one of the things I do have that is absent from these scenarios that will also inform what I do is if, again, in the first scenario, someone entered my house, was rooting around in the fridge and opening stuff, there's the Jackson of it all. No one is coming into this house without Jackson barking. And I actually think that would supersede me going into defense mode. I immediately am getting up to yell at Jackson. And even if I see some stranger in my kitchen eating my leftovers, I'll be like, I'm so sorry. He's really fine. Just like pet him and he'll be fine. Jackson, stop it. Stop it.
Okay.
You barked. You did it. Okay, thank you. No more, Jackson. Hey, again, sorry about him. Hey, are you eating my food? Ooh. We were going to throw out that corn.
That's expired.
It's not good corn. Yeah, it's on my to-do list for I know it's Thursday.
Yeah.
It's on my to-do list. Throw out the corn Saturday. It's bad now though. Don't eat it now.
Eat that. We were actually just keeping it in the fridge so that it didn't stink up the trash before trash day.
Yeah, I wanted to wait till I get a bunch of trash and then I would throw out the stinky trash.
I'll be honest, it's not store expired. That's real expired. I've got this handy little chart.
Look at this chart.
All right, then let me give you one that I also read that involves a dog. There was another woman, in her house in Venice. She heard her dogs go crazy all of a sudden, and then a door slam. And she looked out in her hallway, and the bathroom was shut. And she lived alone in an apartment, and now she did not shut it, and the dog's like going crazy outside the bathroom door. So someone has gotten into the house or in the apartment, realized there were dogs, and immediately put a door between them and the dogs, but now they're trapped in your bathroom.
Yeah.
What do you do now?
Then I absolutely call the police. Then I have my my tools of violence, and I call the police, and I let the person know that the police are on their way. You should leave now, or the police will get here. I'm fine waiting here outside of the house, or you can like run away right this second, because you could probably beat the cops.
Yeah, I wonder if I would, assume the cops are going to take half an hour to 40 minutes to get there. Do you try to negotiate with the person? Do you say, listen, I'm going to take my dog and we're going into our bedroom. I'm giving you an opportunity to leave.
I don't think I say bedroom. I think I say I'm going outside.
I'm taking my dog, though?
There's only one way in or out of the house. I'm going outside. I'm taking my dog.
Yeah.
You go out the door and you turn right and you sprint. And
you go.
And that's fine. That's your best shot of getting away from the cops. I mean, you said 20 or 30 minutes. I live on the beach, so all of our cops are surf cops. So they come depending on the tide. They could be right there.
Right. If the waves are tasty.
Yeah.
You might get a cop right in your window. Okay. And then when you go outside, you want to see this person, don't you?
Yeah.
On a human level, like you need to see their face.
Right. And if they run out, if they come down the stairs and they run out, and it's like, and I'll be like, it's a woman criminal? Progress. What a time to be alive. Thank you, Susan B. Anthony.
Well, amazing. A Taiwanese
Get
woman.
back in there.
You deserve it all. Take all of it. Everything but the corn. I think that because you have so much time then. I think about these, like there was this one was just something I saw online, but it was not on Nextdoor. It was a guy who like subdued a criminal. This guy was like, I don't know if he was robbing the convenience store or what, but there was this Muay Thai guy who subdued this criminal and like was sitting on him, like had his arm wrapped around his neck, but was sitting on him and waiting for police to get there. You have so much time where you're in like this intimate, very close proximity to somebody who is just trying to like do something pretty terrible. We don't know what. I mean, the scale of terror is, I guess, pretty big. So like it could just be that they're trying to rob the place, or it could be that maybe they had other intentions. But like you have a lot of amount of time where you're just like, you're on one side of a door, maybe from a criminal, where you're just like, okay, listen, we're both humans here.
Yeah.
How do we get out of this situation? Because I'm not happy here either. Like, let's come up with a solution here because we have some time. I don't know. I don't even know if you try to do that, or if you like, if that's also engaging is like making it even worse. Because if you have somebody who's crazy and you engage in that way, you might be creating a relationship.
Right.
And then that's also super dangerous. I don't know, man.
Yeah. I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Remember, I don't want to out him, but a guy who used to work for the same company as us, really nice guy. I believe his name was Mike. That's also another reason that I can't out him because I don't remember his name. But he's like a full-sized Gimli from Lord of the Rings. Red beard, red hair, stout, big guy. He came into work one day with a black eye and bruises all over his hands. And he was like, again, for all we knew, the nicest, funniest, not funniest, but like a very funny, pleasant, a great guy to work with and be around. And he said that someone broke into his house where he and his wife and his kids were sleeping. And to hear Mike tell it, it was just like, guy came to the wrong fucking house. And like, I suppose beat him up and sent him packing like the alpha bear that he was. And when he's telling this story to me, 22 or 23-year-old, and you, I mean, at this point, we're the same. Let's just be the same age.
Okay.
I was like, holy shit. And it was all so believable. So my question, do you think he was lying? Do you think he got those bruises some other way?
Fuck. What a terrible thing to lie about. I don't know. It never even occurred to me that it could be a lie.
Because that's, if, I believe a fight happened, but I think if you show up with bruises and a black eye, that is certainly the best story to tell. That's so much better than I got in a bar fight.
I was drunk and I antagonized somebody.
Yes, which is not a mark on his character or anything like that. It's just much more common that a human being would get in a bar fight than a home invasion scenario where you defend your house like Jason fucking Statham or something like that.
Jesus. Yeah. I especially at work. I mean, you could get fired for something like if it's your fault and like you were doing something that was not like you're such a victim in the other way, and everyone just goes, "Oh yeah," and they have to believe you.
Right.
Oh man. I don't know, because
just
then,
something to ponder. As I get older, I feel like I revisit lots of stories that people have told me in my life, and then I think like, hey, wait a minute, that could that be true? Just like a fun game that I play with myself. It's like, because I believe everyone when everyone tells me anything in any circumstances, especially when I was younger. And I'm thinking back to all of the people I worked, like when I was a 15-year-old working at the movie theater, and hearing fantastic stories about either sex or violence from the 17-year-olds who worked at the movie theater. And I was like, man, it's so crazy that Travis at the concession stand at the movie theater has been stabbed 9 times. That's nuts. But he told me, so it's true.
On 9 occasions. It's funny. My son is just at an age where he's starting to get that at school, where like the stories, these outlandish stories are coming in, and he's like bringing them home and being like, "Can you believe that?" And we're like, "No, because it's not true." There was recently, right before Christmas, there was like an ongoing one. I want him to tell it. I wonder if we should do. No, it's not going to work on the podcast. He also may be embarrassed. There was a girl who was a little older in his aftercare, and she kept telling the young boys, about how in the girls' bathroom someone had been killed, and that her and some other girls had seen a body there. And then the next day there was still blood, but they'd gotten rid of the body. And then there was like more and more details each day. It made it so fun. And there's like
That's the thing about like childhood lies is that stories develop as time goes on.
Yeah.
A week will go by, and then suddenly there were two murders.
Yeah, they said that once I think it was like once the blood had gotten cleaned up. So funny. It was like, it was that the mirror was cloudy, like it was darker than normal. So I think like what she was building to was probably that something supernatural had happened through the mirror.
Right.
But like watching this develop and watching like the terror that my son would come home with, he'd be like, and she told us that someone died, but she did because she saw the body. We were like, she did not say, who was it? Was it a child? She couldn't tell because it was in behind the stall, so she could just see the feet.
But I bet if we just wait a little bit longer, I bet if someone else comes to school with a more interesting story, like someone's grandpa passed away or something, I bet she'll remember the body. I bet we'll get some more clues.
That's exactly right. Yeah. If somebody else comes to school and they had just done a trip to Hawaii, I'm pretty positive there will be new developments in the murder bathroom case. But it is real fun to watch him start to experience that and take it all wholesale, because we all do when we're young.
Yeah, certainly. I think there was like I want to say like a Power Rangers live show, or maybe a Live on Ice show. And I came home from school because I really wanted to see that show. And I came home from school and was like, Mom, you'll never believe it. I was talking about wanting to see this Power Rangers show. And wouldn't you know it, George said he has tickets. He couldn't show them to me, but he has them, and he'll give them to me for free. Isn't that? He had never mentioned it before, it's just, Mom, it's crazy how life is, how it all works out all the time.
I did something just now that I shouldn't have done, which is took a peek behind the curtain and thought, what if all of these Nextdoor stories are lies to fuel the narrative?
Yeah.
And there's no reason they can't be.
Certainly true. I feel like so many of the first person stories on narrative on Nextdoor are best case scenario, secondhand, something you heard from someone else in a different town. Worst case scenario, just you spinning your wheels, either for attention or just like you've watched enough horror stories on Fox News or wherever you get your news that you just decided this is I imagined it, so it could probably happen, but no one's going to care if I just tell them a scenario that I dreamed up. So let me just say it happened to me, and then let me get the engagement that comes with that. Not like to go viral, because Nextdoor isn't about going viral. No. It is just about like whatever dopamine hit people get from people either agreeing with them or arguing with them.
I now really suspecting that all of these ones that I've read, taking them as like perfectly true, were probably either at least one-sided, but also completely fabricated. We used to run into that on Cracked. We would have people who would be in the writers' forums or in the writers' room. What did we call it? The forums?
The workshop.
The workshop. We'd have people in the workshop who like had lived these fantastic lives, and a lot of it was made up, if not all of it. We had one person in particular who talked about, we met him. We met him in person when we were in Austin, Texas. I didn't know anything about him at that point, only that he was a writer in the workshop and he had written articles for us. And he started telling me about the time that he had been shot in war.
I know. I felt so bad because we had been sort of sniffing this guy out as a liar on the editorial team for a while. Like we were paying extra attention to the first person stories he pitched, and you weren't in those conversations yet. So I was just watching you like,
eat it up.
eat this guy's stories up. You couldn't
He
believe
had
what
lived a
what an
miraculous
interesting
life.
person he was.
He had been, he was English and he had been shot in a war. I don't know, in like the Falklands or something like that.
Sure.
And then like he also had told me that he had some sort of mill by his house. It was a giant turning wheel and it could go very fast. I don't know what it was for, but at one point it escaped its latchings and took off in the town and like started doing devastation to the town, started rolling through the town, and that he was the only one strong enough to stop it.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there just like a jaw on the floor, just being like, they should make a documentary about you. You've lived such an insane life. And he's older too. So like it felt like, oh, this is an adult talking to me. He must be telling the truth.
Right. Adults don't lie. This was someone who had pitched an article for a long time about making swords.
This is where I really
by hand professionally.
I was the editor on that. That's how that was like his outing.
Yes, and the way he was talking about it, because a lot of our article workshopping was done in plain view of the other writers and editors on the site. So there were people who were like noticing, hey, if what he's describing is true, he would be the only person in the world who could make swords that strong. Yeah. It sounds very fantastical. Like, I'm not a master swords crafter, but I know more than most. And what he's describing is, I believe, impossible. It's like Excalibur level stuff. And he is like a lot of liars when like confronted, a conversation stalls because then a liar can spin it to, now you're impugning my honor. You can call me a lot of things, but you're calling me a liar. And that gets me just so pissed off. I'm just so worked up. And then it's like, now you've changed the conversation. So it's not about proving something. Now it's an emotional thing about us calling you a liar. And that gives him leeway to like, well, I have half a mind to leave. If you guys think I'm such a liar, if you think my character is so low that you would insult my character, then I'll walk away from all this. And I even like DM'd him when this sword stuff was going on and was like, because I've dealt with liars before. And I was like, hey man, I believe you. I 100% believe you. Just take a picture of the sword and send it to me. And like, we don't even need to put it in the article. We don't need to like litigate this in front of everybody else. It's just me. Like, we've worked together for years, you and I. Just like share it with me. It's like, I know you believe me, man. Totally. I know you're one of the good ones. The thing is, I took pictures. Like I said, I took pictures of the swords on my digital camera, but then they called me a liar, and I just got so mad that I smashed the camera, and now I don't have those photos anymore. It's like, no, man, totally. It sucks that you smashed the one camera in the world. I guess I'll just have to take your word for it.
Yeah, he was the. I didn't
think he'd get better at lying with time.
Well, and he told stories about like he had cancer, and then he came on as somebody else, like his sister or his daughter. His daughter, and was like telling everyone like updates on his cancer treatment, and then he got better. And all of that, all of that was a lie.
Yeah,
and it was incredible. It was like I just fall for things, hook, line, sinker, until I was editing that sword article. And then he was talking about how many times he had to fold the steel. And I mean, you fold a piece of paper 8 times and you can't fold it ever again. You can't fold it any more than that, right? And he was folding steel 300 to 400 times. Where I was like, oh, wait a second.
To make this Hattori Hanzo's Kill Bill steel.
I was like, I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, I feel like if you could do that, we would have heard about it on the news or something.
But yeah, I get tricked by liars a lot, and this has actually been very cathartic for me, this podcast, because I'm realizing now that I need to take Nextdoor with a grain of salt.
I feel that way. I watch more documentaries than I ever used to, partly because Shay likes documentaries, and partly because there are just like docs are clearly in and have been in for a while. There's just so fucking many of them on so many subjects. And you get a lot of interviews from just regular ass normal people. And so many of them I think are just liars. You watch documentaries like about murders in small towns and stuff, and I think I don't know what all standards of journalism need to be met for someone to like release a documentary on Netflix. I don't know that there's like a governing board of ethics or facts that is like giving the official documentary seal of truthfulness on Netflix. I don't think there is one.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of this just seems like kooks in small towns spinning their wheels about stuff.
Yeah. I think it's totally possible. I think it's just people with an axe to grind. Just spinning. Yeah. Just like,
Yeah.
And maybe some of it's true, but like the way that you build a story, you can hear yourself as you're telling a story if it's not interesting. And like that, you feel that instinct to be like, well, let's make it interesting.
Yeah.
I just want to be able to trust people.
I know. You can't even trust a can of soup, Soren. If you take anything away from this episode, let it be that.
All right, let's end it there.
Good episode. The show is Quick Question. Or is it?
It is.
We're recorded and edited and produced by the irreplaceable Gabe Harder. Our theme song is by Mirex. Their digital album is available at mirex.bandcamp.com. You can still find me on Twitter at DOB_INC, although I don't know when I was on there last. The show is also there, QQ_Soren and Dan. Soren is on Blue Sky. You can find him by searching Soren on Blue Sky. I think he's having a lot of fun over there.
I do bits.
Email the show, qqwithsorenanddaniel@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram, where we post video clips and more stuff about the show. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/quickquestion. And you can watch video episodes of this show on YouTube at youtube.com/user/quickquestion.
Oh boy.
No, QQ Pod.
Wait, I do know it. It's
Okay,
if you go
prove it.
to youtube.com/@QQ podcast.
Hey, it's not user or account. Great. All right, that's the show.
All right, bye.
Bye.
I've got a quick question for you, alright? I wanna hear your thoughts, I wanna know what's on your mind. I've got a quick question for you, alright? The answer's not important, I'm just glad that we could talk tonight. So what's your favorite? How did you get? When will I be remembered? Was it ever? Where did all the weeks on? Oh, forget it. Soren, Bowie, Daniel O'Brien. Two best friends and comedy writers. If there's an answer, they're gonna find it. I think you'll have a great time here. I think you'll have a great time here.